my aunt, because my mother's dead. My aunt is there now, and she's doing all this stuff.
Part 2, everybody. Part 2.
And
if you thought part 1 was good, you are going to love part 2.
I'm standing here, but you get these things off of me.
I had a little bit of an internet issue. It's a little spotty here.
He said, okay, I'll get right there.
Paste this. Yeah. Part 2.
And he was wonderful.
Where am I in part 2? Let's see.
The one up there, for some reason, they've
right,
been
so
telling him and all the other things.
2D. Right, in part 1 of this, we talked about socially engineering, what the concept is, how it indicates from CS. Mom? Hey, Mom, listen. Can you shush for a minute, please? Can you just be quiet so I can talk to this thing through? Hey, I got to see, Mom, see this stuff here? I got to do a presentation on it, okay? I'm going to a teaching conference. All right, so what we did in part 1 was talk about social engineering as a concept from C.S. Joseph as it being an ego hack, manipulation, preparing an attack. He also talks about helping people, talking out one side of his mouth and then the other. And we discussed the consent K, what this fundamentally shows is a lack of respect for consent from C.S. Joseph, that he thinks it's okay with utilitarian justifications to socially engineer other people. He also seemed to think he can possibly be good at it, which is crazy. Identify problem areas. Number 2. We covered that. We talked about his character issues, his dishonesty, cowardice, agential utilitarianism. And again, most importantly, we focused on the fact that this is done out of compassion. We were trying to help him. And the reason we were trying to help him is because last time when we tried to taunt him, we got in trouble for bullying. So this time we've learned our lesson. We're taking a very compassionate, gentle, concerned approach. This is kind of like an intervention, except instead of being addicted to drugs or something, C.S. Joseph is addicted to wrongness and in a state of continuing ontological turmoil because of his poor relationship with truth. It's something that we, as good people, need to help him with, right? Okay, so let's look now at what else we went in part 1. Self-delusion and blind spots. He's obviously not an INTP. He's not qualified to give relationship advice because of the aforementioned ontological turmoil. And while we can be as compassionate as we want, we also need to remember that like, let's say somebody gets radiation poisoning. Their hair falls out. They get dead skin all over the place. And what ends up happening is there's only so much we can do to help. The best thing we can do for sure, though, is to give them a space where their sort of ontological dissolving doesn't get all over everybody else, right? Like right now, C.S. Joseph's ontological dissolving is getting all over everybody else. And that's part of the problem. That's why we have to, I know he's really content with what he believes. I know, and that's why we need to help him, because what he doesn't understand, and how is he going to tolerate the guilt, the shame, the anxiety, the torture, the self-torture he's going to put himself through when he realizes, number 1, he's been wrong all this time. Number 2, he's been leading everybody astray and giving terrible advice. Number 3, he's been charging $300 an hour to do it. And number 4, he's been lying to everybody. I agree. In general, these are symptoms of a disorder called, ontological collapse disorder or something. It has to do with him being traumatized by bullies young, him being an obese child, and finally getting that gastric bypass surgery. After he got the surgery, he feels as though he's a new person physically. But ontologically, he's still the person who bore all that trauma and abuse that he did not deserve at all. Remember, that part's definitely not his fault. So how does he deal with it? Instead of processing through the experiences, he projects outward the old C.S. Joseph onto the world and says, new C.S. Joseph had figured out the solution. New C.S. Joseph didn't figure out any solution. The doctor gave him gastric bypass surgery. C.S. Joseph is not responsible for new C.S. Joseph. The doctor is. But regardless, this creates a kind of ontological dissonance that results in what we see here, which is somebody in a sort of wild, years-long exercise of self-delusion, pretending to be an ENTP, practicing and practicing and practicing, trying to act like an ENTP more and more and more, and then becoming increasingly addicted and obsessed with whiteboards, so much so that it's like he has tattoos of whiteboards on his body. He starts saying whiteboard, whiteboard, whiteboard all the time he's walking around. It's tragic. It is not, it is sad. It's sad. and we need to help. Remember, this live stream is a live stream born of and exercised through compassion for C.S. Joseph. No way anybody could say this is bullying because we're genuinely worried about the guy. I mean, we gotta step up and say, C.S. Joseph, it's time to pull yourself back up onto your feet, buddy. I know things are hard, but with enough willingness and humility, you can overcome this toxic cycle of wrongness and cultery that you've engaged in. I am, Reginator, I am a metaphysician, okay? I've been licensed by all licenses all the time. I am a licensed metaphysician. I can prescribe metaphorical drugs. Okay, so let's talk about ways we can help him. Okay, well, let's look at his cognitive function breakdown real quick. Sorry, before we do that, to talk about other ways in which he's causing disinformation to muddy the waters. NI is not willpower. TI is conditional logic, but only conditional logic. It is not the specific logics of individual physical systems. That distinction must be made, or you are only going to muddy the water. NE is not metaphysics. NE is creative ideation. It could be metaphysical. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. Why would we conclude that NE is metaphysics? Does creativity only occur in philosophy? That's crazy. FE is not ethics. FE is perception management. If we were to say we're ethics, I would say FE comprises the logical rules we use to justify constraints upon positions of power. But that's TI, not FE. SI is not discipline. Absolutely not. The laziest type of all is the ISFJ. The single laziest type of all is the ISFJ. SI is absolutely not discipline. That's insane to think that it is. TE is rationale. Well, okay, fine. That one's getting kind of close, except is it a utilitarian rationale or a TI kind of principlist rationale? Because those are two different things and they assort with two different functions. He's failed to make the distinction because to him it doesn't matter. As long as it's approximately talking, I'll just throw in some cognitive words and I'll throw in some rocks and some sticks and mush it all together and call it a soup. Well, that's not going to work, obviously. ENTJ seductress. What ENTJ seductress is going to send a man pictures of her boobs because she believes that man will then feel obligated to go out with her? If she does think, if that is her thought process, her TE is as shitty as her FE is as shitty as her FI. That's insane. Nobody thinks that. SE polar is not the laziest. They're the most they function the furthest below their potential. Okay, so it's like INTPs are not necessarily lazy if you're talking about reading things on the internet and playing video games, but there's no way to interpret watching Dr. Phil all day as anything but lazy. No, I'm absolutely not, Jim Beam. This is a public intervention for a reason. He is currently a public figure charging people $300 an hour to give them potentially damaging and toxic advice because he's completely wrong about almost everything. So no, I can't do this in private because he is in the grip of a self-delusion that needs to be knocked loose if we're going to help him at all, okay? Compassion towards C.S. Joseph means making it more and more difficult for him to persist in his behavior of continual lying. He doesn't even know he's lying half time, so half time is just mistakenness, but half time he does. Okay, so we're now getting down to where we're starting to work here with understanding why it's going to be difficult to work with him or to hack him or to socially engineer him, because his meta framework is all filled with, it's just a complete disaster area. It looks like Dresden after the firebombing. That's what his meta frame looks like. So he's not linking to anything consistently at all within his own head. So it's going to be frustrating for anybody trying to use any kind of NI to help him. So what do we need to do? We need to remember first, the last thing we need to remember is E. What's happened is he began building intellectual stuff on his own foundation and discovered in short order that his intellectual foundation was catastrophically unable to bear the load of the ideation he was building on top of it. And that's why we see him with his strangely circular masturbatory whiteboard fantasy land engaged in continual delusion. If we want to help C.S. Joseph, first of all, we should ask YouTube, why is it that you are promoting the videos of somebody who clearly suffers from a variety of delusions and who clearly is unable to meaningfully talk about the subject that he's talking about in ways that don't necessarily hurt people by his incredible wrongness and misleadingness? I have typed enough people have come to me and saying, I got typed by C.S. Joseph, paid him $300 or whatever, and I'm not satisfied at all. Well, yeah, sure, he has charisma if you're only looking at the symbols of competence and not at all at the actualities of competence, because he has no actualities of competence. Nobody who's critiquing him on the right grounds should ever afford him any charisma because he's so obviously wrong that nobody can find that charismatic if they're aware of it at all. The thing is, though, because of people like C.S. Joseph, the waters are so muddied around cognitive function with so much disinformation that it's hard to get anybody to really lock in and say, all right, look, we actually do know how this shit works. I've already talked about it. And C.S. Joseph clearly does not. And C.S. Joseph can't even begin to distinguish between the kinds of reasons he's providing or the different frames he's using, or whether those reasons are appropriate to those frames, or whether he's consistent with his criterion, or any of those things. Well, Jean Grey, I would point out that if you had searched for cognitive function step and he didn't exist, then you probably would have been to me directly. You wouldn't have had to take the wrong road first, right?
He's nice. He's really great.
It makes sense that his parents were SJs and leans into religious arguments and appeal to authority. He have faith. He's a performer, and that's SP-ish, so I think ESTP or TJ. I mean, I think ESTJ. I just do, because it's the polar NI that really stands out. It's the polar NI. Yes, his TI is bad, but he does use some TI periodically. It's used instrumentally, and it's probably sub-instrumental. It's like it only serves its only little purpose for him, and then he discards it immediately. There's no consistency. There's nothing non-arbitrary. No, he's not a type that's currently not in MBTI socionics. He is an ESTJ. You need to understand something. ESTJs, like C.S. Joseph, have third slot extroverted intuition. They can do some extroverted intuition. Just I have third slot FE. I may not be the best at managing perceptions, but I'm not unlikable myself. I'm reasonably charismatic myself. If he's more charismatic to me than I am, if he's more likable than I am, and he's doing a better job of it, and also concurrently wrong, then that's not a good thing. His good abilities and charisma then are serving an evil purpose because it is disseminating things that are factually untrue, lies, falsehoods, wrongnesses, and things that mislead people and cause them actually a lot of ontological distress. When people come to me and they're like, I'm so confused, I've been just tossing and turning for weeks over this thing because like DSP typed me as this and CS typed me as this, and neither of them really talked to the person and give them a good explanation for anything. Realize DSP and CS Joseph just gave misinformation that caused those people weeks of discomfort. They're hugely significant to them, in which they do not feel resolution about until after they talk to me, because I'm right about their type, or I'm right about my own uncertainty regarding it. So I won't say you're 100% if you're not 100%. Sometimes I go, I can only get to about 90% on you. I can't get that last 10%. I'm sorry. But I don't powerfully state with conviction the wrong thing like DSP does, like CS Joseph does. Those things are harmful. People don't like having their ontologies fucked with in that fashion. All right, so we need an action plan. I understand C.S. Joseph's limits. Anti-polar, big one. Generally low intelligence, whatever type he is, he's not a particularly smart version of that type. And that's fine. Everybody's different intelligence level. There's nothing wrong with that at all. It's just he happens to be one who's lower intelligence of whatever type he is. 3, painfully inept at humor and freestyling in general. So when you say he's charismatic, I wonder to whom, because every joke he attempts to make causes me a lot of suffering. It's absolutely terrible. Like, I'm not sure if he's unaware they don't work or what. He's got one character voice that he relies on over and over and over again. I've got like 17 or something. And his jokes they're not even jokes. They're just, somebody needs to help him because he's embarrassing himself. He may be embarrassing himself to great success monetarily and viewers and stuff, but to optimize, he needs to recognize, okay, I'm making an ass of myself here. This isn't me. I'm I'm pretending to be somebody I'm not. He has his faith fully invested in the wrong thing. This makes it a challenge. He likely has substantial intimacy issues from everything I've heard, and that also makes it a challenge because he's going to take everything as a challenge to his manhood. Until he feels good about himself in the bedroom, he's always going to take everything out as some sort of challenge to his masculinity. So that's going to be a problem, right? He displays a lot of damage stemming from bullying and body image issues. As an obese child, C.S. Joseph internalized many horrible societal narratives through no fault of his own. However, following gastro bypass, C.S. Joseph displayed a split of sorts, projecting all aspects of the old C.S. Joseph onto those he tries to teach and help how to be a new person, like he's a new person now, right? Except he's just swaddled in an echo chamber of his own making. That's why he bans people, kicks them out and stuff. He doesn't have anything to teach because he didn't accomplish the goal himself. A doctor did it with surgery. I am not being non-constructive. I am ensuring that we all have the facts we need and the realities we need and the analysis we need to help C.S. Joseph. He desperately needs a compassionate, substantial intervention of both scope and scale. And the reason for that is he is neck deep in this toxic waste dump of his own self-perpetuating wrongness and disinformation campaign. And it's very unlikely that he will be able to pull himself out of it without our compassionate help. This is very, very constructive. Absolutely it is. So he has a problem here. He's willing to be wicked. That's what we need to fix first, okay? So let's talk about the possible avenues to helping C.S. Joseph achieve growth. Number one, truth training. Just as a tone-deaf person can be trained to have at least some sense of pitch, with enough practice, C.S. Joseph can learn to sometimes be able to distinguish truth from falsehood, regardless of antipolar or not, okay? So there's hope. Number two, willingness to learn comprises a necessary but insufficient condition here for C.S. Joseph. So what that means is we aren't like him. We're not going to be advocating non-consensual stuff, obviously, because that's wicked. So getting his consent in this occasion then is going to require us to, A, frame things such that the truth is positioned as consistent with that which C.S. Joseph already thinks is the case. In other words, whatever you're going to say, preface it with, as you taught me, C.S. Joseph, meow, 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 meow. Now, meow, 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 meow does not have to be anything that C.S. Joseph actually taught you. But as long as you position it that way, it becomes palatable to him, and you can gain his consensual willingness to be helped, which we need before we can help him. So even though true statements almost always bear a marked distinction from C.S. Joseph's affirmations, C.S. Joseph is at least as likely to simply begin parroting the truth you voice as he is likely to dispute the words, provided you attribute the truth you voice to him. Because one, until someone explicitly indicates through direct words or clear FP displays whose side somebody supports, C.S. Joseph doesn't have an opinion on what they say. He needs to determine whether or not they're on his side. Then he will either say, I agree with that person, or they're not on his side, in which case he disagrees. Number two, he first must figure out if a person is an ally because he's TI ignoring it and I polar. That means he's not ever looking at the actual logic of it, and he's not ever looking at the truth. FE8 slot is pretty good as a workaround. But this field he's working in is a particularly TI field, so it's not going to be good enough, okay? So let's look about this next one here. Other things we can do to help him. Appeal to utility. When you're trying to convince C.S. Joseph, hey, buddy, you need to quit. Your addiction to wrongness is starting to impact your family and friends and stuff, okay? So when we do that, we need to appeal to utility. Say, hey, buddy, this is really a useful thing. We can measure the impacts nice and concrete. And then he'll be like, okay, that sounds good. All right, appeal to creativity. Remember, he's got third slot NE. We want to critique his existing creativity because, first of all, his third slot NE wants to be seen as original and clever. But we also want to critique his existing creativity because, B, sane people or, people don't want to be tortured with bad comedy. People don't like bad comedy. He is going to continue trying to make bad jokes until somebody explains to him that that's not working, C.S. Joseph. You're not original or clever or funny at all. In fact, you're painful to watch. That can help him direct his NE to a different location that's more useful, okay? Number two, present the truth as though he came up with it or his existing mentor did. Because of tool SI, even though third slot NE feels satisfied with creative endeavor, it creates quite weakly. What does feel satisfying to CS Joseph? Well, he relies on his experience, his mentor, and the teachings he therefore internalized as the real justification for all his claims. I learned this from the master. I might be wrong, but TESI tells me he can't because he was my experience as a teacher. Okay, so remember, these are ways in which you can take advantage of his natural attentional channels without exploiting him in a non-consensual way to help him recognize some of these shortcomings and begin a serious program of self-development, which is going to take years, but he can get there eventually being like a regular human being like all of us here, who can interact with each other without cowardice and fear and running away and stuff. Okay, number 4, attack the polar. It's generally a good notion to attack the polar if you need to get through to somebody and it's just like they are not letting you get through to them. They are sticking their fingers in their ears, closing their eyes, and you need to get through to them because it's important. You're trying to help, remember. Then attack the polar. Critique is NI or lack thereof. Linked to utility. Your refusal to engage the truth is causing utilitarian harms. That will concern him because he understands that. It's simple enough. B, linked to logic. This is not a principled position. That will likely confuse him, but you might want to just throw it out there anyway. C, linked to creative attainment. He's going to like this because of the third slot NE. Say, listen, you can do a great job of creating something, but you got to work with some true things first or else it won't work, right? If you only work with lies, you can't successfully create anything good out of lies. So 5, fewer questions, more statements. It is only reinforcing his delusion to ask him questions as though he would know the answer to anything that anybody would want to hear regarding psychology or cognitive functions. One of the reasons he's able to sustain this delusion so long is he has these live streams and other events where people are asking questions as though he were the expert. As presented up here, remember, he's not doing objective self-criticism like I am. He's not evaluating his own arguments objectively. He's not letting other people evaluate him. He's not seeking any objective evaluation. So what does that mean? It means don't ask him questions. Just inform him of his wrongness. Because if everybody did that, he would have to go back to the drawing board and go, okay, let me start over here. What type am I? Which he desperately needs to do. I mean, he's doomed right now on a life path unless we can intervene and stop him from persisting as this sort of charlatan cult leader figure. Let me give you the Mom and Rachel example. Mom and Rachel were sitting at the kitchen table talking earlier. Rachel was doing a great job of just being nice and interacting with my mom and just letting her babble at her, basically. And so Mom babbles. Rachel goes, oh, wow, that's great. And that just encourages Mom to babble some more. Now, with Mom, it's great because Mom's never going to be able to get better. She's not going to learn to stop babbling. If you always encourage a newborn baby to just babble and never say anything sensible, that would be bad, right? Well, what we are doing with C.S. Joseph when we ask him any kind of meaningful question about his ideas or anything at all is we are contributing to him continuing to babble. We're just encouraging the babbling. It's great when Rachel encourages my mom's babbling like that because it makes my mom so happy and calm and content. And, you know, it's like it's wonderful caregiving. But wonderful caregiving for C.S. Joseph does not include provoking more of his babbling, encouraging his babbling, or tolerating it even. He needs to grow up and be a big boy now. That means he needs to go back to the drawing board and learn a few things, understand what kinds of ideas are to the best of his ability, and come back humble. You know, I don't really understand this, but I've heard from Eric this, and present those things, and that's fine. You know, there will come a day, hopefully, if we can get through to him when he comes back and he's like, I'm so sorry, you guys. I don't know why I was such a douchebag and trying to socially engineer everybody as though I know better or something. I see now that I can socially engineer a 4-year-old INTP, let alone a full-grown one. Thanks, everybody. I'm C.S. Joseph. Please forgive me. When he gets there, then we're somewhere, and we've really saved a human being. And it's my hope that this scathingly helpful video will be the launching point for exactly the sort of growth I am looking for. John Christopher Lestone. Remember, the purpose of this scathingly, contemptuously helpful video is to help, not to be scathing and contemptuous. Thanks, John. Okay, everyone. Thanks so much for watching. This was the second one. Again, here, let me put the link to this because I want to see us all gather together as a community, come together and do this intervention and make C.S. Joseph okay.
Lindsay still doesn't know what type CSJ is.
He's an ESTJ. I want us all to go. We go see when we got him fixed on this. When our combined efforts have revealed to him, and he's able to be broken down and built back up again, we'll bring him into the fold. And C.S. Joseph, now that you're humble and acting like who you are rather than this big fake ENTP, come, let us embrace you. You are one of us. But not until, right? Not until we help him. We should not embrace him until we help him. We have a responsibility to help first, then embrace. Okay, so anyway, thanks for watching. Don't forget to eat plenty of cheese. And C.S. Joseph, if you're watching this, my prayers are with you. You have endured so much trauma. And let go and let us love you. Okay? Just, you can see here, you got a lot of problems, buddy. You got a lot of serious issues, little buddy. Let us love you. Let us love you into healing. Okay?